So we have a special promotion going on here in February. This is our diesel tablet. This was just launched last year. This is our mid-range diagnostic tool. It will do thousands of the most common diagnostic commands. So if you're working on your EGR system, you're trying to change engine parameters, you're trying to work on your SCR system, this will do the resets, the calibrations, the installs, all the things. You can one tap to repair information to get instant repair information for all your fault codes. It's a great, great tool to put inside your shop, and it's priced very, very aggressively for the price point. And in February, we have a special promotion going on. So if you buy this tool in February, and there's a limited amount, you will get 5 free online training courses. So these online training courses are not about the tool. These courses are about how to do electrical, how to troubleshoot after treatment systems, how to do all this advanced stuff that you need to know for today's commercial truck. So it's a $500 value, comes absolutely free with the product for the month of February. Check it out, 30-day money-back guarantee. We know you're going to love it. We sold a ton of these things already.
So I want you to kind of explain, who you are, where you come from, how you got started in the industry, where you're at now, kind of the career path that you took, how you got into the industry, and kind of go from there.
I'm Troy Nevergall. I've been in the diesel industry for 30 years. Served roles as entry-level technician or mechanic in those days. Just that's what I was, a mechanic. In the shop environment, working on heavy equipment. Spent 18 years in a field service truck, 8 years as a regional service manager. Well, I guess a year as foreman, 8 years as a regional service manager. And now I've spent the last year and a half as a branch manager for a different distributor of heavy equipment. So got a long time in the industry. And kind of got into it because I wasn't going to go to college. That wasn't my path. And got started in it as a kid, taking my bicycle apart, and a radio apart, or whatever it happened to be. Started working on cars when I was about 13, and just needed repairs around we had a 67 Chevy Impala. And I think that was my first job, a water pump. A small block Chevy, pretty straightforward and easy job, but for a 13-year-old,
oh my God, what's
yeah,
this?
what am I doing?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got started into it, and started working right out of high school for a landscaper with about 300 pieces of equipment. There were 6 technicians in that shop, and we did snow plowing in the wintertime. So we worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week, and then we were on snow call. So just spent a lot of time in the shop.
And you did not go to trade school, correct?
I after that landscaping job, I did try to get in the car industry and went to a Ford asset program, is what they called it at the time. And it was were hired through a dealership, and then they would send you to school on as a 6-week, I believe, rotation. 6 weeks in the dealership, 6 weeks at school. And it was probably a really good program, but after being in the industry for a while and working on heavy equipment, and when it was pickup trucks and trailers and landscaping equipment, I decided that I can just go do this on my own without finishing up school. So I dropped out of that too. So no, not officially, but I did for a minute go to a program.
But it wasn't necessarily a requirement.
It was not a requirement.
It didn't make or break your career.
No, it did not. As a service manager, I always liked to have people with trade school background, because you're an example of that, and paid attention in school and understood the fundamentals. And I think that's the best you can do is out of a trade school, is understand those pieces and apply yourself. Because I think there's a lot of good trade schools out there, and I think there's a lot of good instructors within those schools. I do have a idea or an opinion about some schools that push students through, that they're not ready to enter the workforce. They're not ready to be hired up because they occupied a seat and they needed to vacate that seat for the next class coming in, and they got pushed through. I'd like to see a lot more requirements, a lot more expectation out of the student in a trade school. I think the product would be a lot better coming in the industry.
Well, and that would be doing a favor to the fucking kid too, right? Like,
To be in jail for the money they take from these kids, from the families. If there's a student that is paying for it on his own, God bless him for getting through. But I think that he was robbed, for families that are helping their child, into that secondary education and paying all that money. Yeah, they're being robbed in some instances.
well, and the kid enters the industry and he's like, the fuck? Because all the shit they let slide in tech school isn't fucking sliding in the industry. It doesn't fucking slide.
We're paying you, in these days, really good money to come into the industry and expecting a lot for that. And when the student doesn't, or the newly graduated student doesn't have the basis, it just is really disappointing. But I think that's where everybody's at businesses that have employed technicians. They are creating their own training program, because you can't get away with not having ability to train somebody up that's pretty green, whether they have background in a different industry, say from the car industry coming into diesel side, or they were doing a lot of maintenance stuff. There's a lot of good people in our militaries that do a lot of maintenance stuff. They come out and they don't have they wasn't blessed with the opportunity to learn all the detail of it. And I think that you have to have that training program. The manufacturers have to provide it to the dealers to help them along the way as new technology comes out. They need to continue that. So trade school is a great way to go, and I'd like to see it as a service manager in somebody's background. It's not a necessity, not at all. Not at all. If somebody can apply themselves, that's what I like about giving aptitude tests as well during the hiring process. Just see where they're at. We had technicians that took the aptitude test that completely bombed it, but it allowed you to understand if they had strengths or if they had severe weaknesses. You understood where they lied, as well as you understood what type of a person they were when challenged with a test, because ultimately all the technicians today have to be certified. They have to get product specific knowledge given by the manufacturer and tested by the manufacturer to see if you really understand it, so that they can minimize their warranty payouts. And I think that portion of what is needed and required of a technician today is not understood. I mean, you don't just go to school and then start the job and never learn anything more than what you picked up in trade school. You learn every day, and every day there's new technology that comes out that you have to be trained in, certified in, to understand it. So we have to have lifelong learners in the industry.
Oh yeah, we've all known those technicians that think they know everything and don't think they need to learn anything more. And they are usually not the top of the fucking, they think they are, but they're usually not the top performers. I worked with a kid, I call him a kid, he was probably like 38, but 35-ish, I don't know. And we were sitting at a break table and we're all talking about shit, and I'm like, no, I made some kind of comment about, any mechanic that tells you they never fuck up is either lying or not trying hard enough. And this motherfucker looks at me dead in the fucking face and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I never fuck anything up. And he's dead serious. He is dead fucking serious. And I'm like, and the foreign exchange dude, I call him foreign exchange dude because he was like straight green card from fucking Ukraine. He's looking at me like, Melissa, don't do it. Because he knows, like, me and this motherfucker butted heads one of the very few people I butted heads on all the time. But this is exactly the reason why. Because he's always over like, I never fuck shit up. I never fuck anything up. I'm the best mechanic in this shop. And I'm like, bro, I just watched you replace 3 wiring harnesses, 2 controllers, and like every fucking sensor on a backhoe. Because you do the poof, kind of diagnostics, okay? You're telling me, yeah, of course you didn't fuck it up because you replaced the entire electrical system. Of course you were right. That's not the... This is really frustrating.
That goes into parts changers versus, mechanics or technicians,
Yeah. It's like, dude, we all fuck up. It's fine. Just admit it. It's okay.
A lot of people can hang parts, but it's what everybody desires and wants to have employed with them is those guys can diagnose.
Yeah.
And really come down to the smoking gun of this is my failure right here. This is what is worn out, or this is what's failed, or this is what shorts out or overheats and then stops working, or and this is what it is, and not just wholesale replace everything. Say, well, we fixed it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but what was wrong with it? Nobody knows.
Oh, he had some fucking giant long 30-minute explanation as to why every single thing he replaced was wrong. But I'm like, or was fucked up. And I'm like, this is also the same guy that I have watched him help another mechanic try to diagnose a problem. What was it? I don't remember what machine it was. But long story short, they replaced a controller because a fuse was bad. And this is the same kid. This is the kid that he was helping. This was a horrible team, right? Because the kid that this guy was helping is the kid that like tries for like 5 minutes, and if he can't figure it out, he goes around and asks everybody in the shop what they think. And he will ask until he finds an answer he likes. And then does that, right? The easy answer. That's what he wants. He just wants you to, and he stopped like asking me for help because I wouldn't just give him the answer. I would give him a direction towards the answer, not the answer. And he would get mad because he was lazy and didn't want to fucking figure it out. So he'd go around and ask until he found somebody that was willing to either give him the answer or give him an answer he thought was easiest. So not only is this the kid he's helping, but it's also this guy that's helping him. So yeah, so so he's over there, he's like, it's a controller. And I think it was an excavator, if I remember correctly. I think it was like a Hitachi excavator, if I remember correctly, and mid-size. And he's like, oh, it's a controller. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, bro, I know the capstones aren't like a godsend, and I know they don't just magically give you the knowledge to miraculously diagnose that machine. But, I had a guy in a capstone, an instructor that was, I don't know, he was like an engineer for John Deere at a point in time, said that 99% of the controllers that we as mechanics send them are good. I'm telling you, you gotta look into this. Like, does it have power? Is the controller even getting power? Like, he's like, no, it's a controller. This other technician helped me, and, we agree that it's a controller. I'm like, okay. Long story short, they replaced the controller, didn't fix it. Guess what it was? It's a fuse for the power to the controller. And I'm not saying, like, everybody fucks up, right? Everybody fucks up. Do you remember the fucking, I love telling this story. Do you remember the coupler incident on the breaker on the excavator? I did put a breaker on with the manual coupler. Yeah, that I ripped $1,000 worth of hoses off. And yeah, that was fun. I tell that story to people because I try to show people, like, people think I'm like this stuck up person. They see my videos and they're like, oh, she's stuck up, I bet. And I'm like, no, actually, I will sit here and tell you all my fuck ups. Here's one of them. I ripped $1,000 worth of brand new hoses off of a fucking excavator because I forgot to lock the coupler. In front of a salesman. And it sprayed oil everywhere. There was a fucking customer and a salesman on the fucking line right there, right when I did that.
So I like the other one where I think you pulled a front axle out of a loader, like maybe.
Oh no, I know where this is going. It was a 644.
And I think we all told you put a cap in the line. Cap that hose.
A metal
off.
cap.
It'll drain. Yeah, it'll drain the hydraulic tank on you if you're not careful. And so you better put a cap on. Yeah, and you think you might have put a plastic cap or something in there.
Mm-hmm. It was a little red one.
I came in on a Sunday. I think it might have been a Sunday. I came into the shop, and in front of the bay door is about an inch and a half of oil. It's probably 40 feet long and 20 feet wide. I go in the shop and there is no oil left in the machine. It is all in the bay and has ran out the bay door almost to the street. I think I used about 10
remember that.
bags of floor dry to put a moat around that oil slick.
Yep, I remember coming into work Monday and I walked into the shop and I looked, and on top of my toolbox, which was my little green and black one at the time, is 18 bags of fucking floor dry, empty floor bags, right? And I'm like, what the fuck?
I think I put all the floor dry bags on your toolbox.
You did. You stacked them. Like, there's like a pile this high on my fucking toolbox. I'm like, what the fuck? And then obviously Goober's behind me, right? And he walks in and he's like, oh shit! He's over there laughing his ass off. And I've got a lake of oil.
Yeah, because I don't think I made you clean it up. I only stopped it from like running out to this, the ditch in the front of the shop there. And so I just mowed it off, basically.
Yep. But so I had that, I pulled an axle out to do brakes in that loader, the front axle, and I had one of the little red caps in there. And I had this little teeny tiny pan underneath it because it was just barely dripping, right? And I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. And it sat there and just barely dripped all week. And then I come back Monday and there's 18 bags of floor dry on my toolbox and all of the oil is on my floor. I'm like, this is fucking great. And Jason is over there helping me clean it up because he's getting amazing entertainment out of the fact that I just fucked this up. And yeah, that was great. Actually, the whole front shop helping me with that, thank God. But they were all also laughing. They want to say laughing with me, laughing at me. So yeah, that was fun. I got my payback though when I think it was Jason. He had that hose built for that loader he did a cylinder on. And I think the parts guys put like a radiator hose instead of an actual head or something because it fucking exploded when he went to start that thing up and it sprayed all over Joe's backhoe and all over the fucking floor. So yeah.
All the mishaps, all the misfortune mishaps that nobody knows about if they've not been working in a shop.
If people don't believe me, I'm like, dude, I fucked up so much shit. I had so many learning curves. So many.
Can I tell them? Well, I don't know if it's appropriate if you tell everybody your nickname.
Oh, go for it. I've told people my Nader nickname.
No, War Paint.
That's what Rick called me. Oh, War Paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We nicknamed you War Paint because you did 5 minutes. We'd started at 6 or 7, depending on if we're working overtime or not. And 5 minutes into the day, you had a smudge under your eye and where you pushed your hair back on your forehead and grease hanging out of your hair. And so, you had like war paint on your face first thing in the morning. And that's just the way you operated. You didn't get worried about getting dirty or how you looked or how big of a job it was or how nasty the machine was that you worked on. You just got after it. And that was actually a badge of honor and pride that we called you War Paint because it didn't matter. You got into it.
Yep, War Paint. And then later on in my days, Rick started calling me Nader because my bay looked like a tornado. Yeah, that's the one. That's the bad thing that came with how I worked is my bay reflected what my face looked like.
I will tell you, and this is a fact, that our expenditure of floor dry went down when you moved north. It was like, what happened? We got all this floor dry. Our bill is way less than it normally is. And we're like, I don't know. What's going on? Are we reusing that much of it? We really had to think. It's like, no, Melissa's not here any longer.
Yep. Yeah, about that. Floor dry's my friend. Yeah, about that. That's the moral of my story in every shop. I've ever worked in. I did start using in the big construction Four Rivers shop I worked at. I did they had like a Zamboni. I Zambonied my floor quite often, which was really awesome. But yeah. Yeah, the floor dries.
I didn't get one for the old shop until after you'd left. Otherwise, you'd have wore it out, I think.
Probably. Probably.
You know, today I hate floor dry. I cannot stand using floor dry anyway.
I don't like it either. I'd much rather use the pig mats. But Jason used to yell at me at the new shop for using too many pig mats. So
Yeah, we're trying to. We're going to have a new shop here, and hopefully we can move in a couple of weeks. And I want to use floor dry like only as a last resort. We got a center drain in it. It all goes out to the grease trap. So yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of otherwise, other cleaning of the shop and trying to keep it floor dry free. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you could operate in a shop without floor dry in it.
Well,
you you can try to mop up some of that shit, but have fun with that, and you're gonna need to buy a new mop by the time you're done with that. Or do the whole shovel method, because if it's a big enough mess that I'm more than aware of and familiar with, you can shovel it into a bucket and then mop it. Yeah, been there.
So do you miss the industry now?
oh
You
my
miss
God, yes.
Well, you've only got like $90,000 worth of tools.
I got more than that, dude. I got fucking 4 toolboxes sitting out there. I got 4 toolboxes. I have a big red triple bay now, like a giant triple bay that I bought used off a Matco truck, and that's full. Nope, it's all paid off. Yep, I paid off. So, my black and green toolbox I had, that one with all the tools in it, I had a loan through Snap-on with that. When my brother died, I used all that money to pay it off. So, or some of the money that we got from his death to pay it off. But then I bought my triple bay toolbox, and they only wanted like $3,800 for it. So I traded my black and green box and like $1,600 in cash, and that's how I got that toolbox. And then I have a black double bay, which is actually funny because it's the exact same toolbox as my other one, just without a trim kit, that I bought from my home shop because I wanted to have tools at home, and now I have all my tools at home. So I have that toolbox, and then I have 2 tool carts. So I have my little green one that I bought, and then I have a gray Matco one that I bought used. I buy all my shit used.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Tools are so damn expensive that you got to find the bargains.
Yep. I got all my shit paid off though, especially before I left the industry. I made sure all my shit was paid off. So everything I have I own, which is good.
That is good. That is good. That's the other piece of getting into the industry as a young guy, as a young technician without many tools, with being faced with going out and buying all that, and wanting to get good quality, stuff that's going to last and work and function. And sure, you can go to Harbor Freight and get that crap and come to work with it, but it's just not
It's fucking maddening to try and use that now.
Yeah, it's not the best tooling. You're going to get hurt. You're going to, things are going to break and wear out very fast. And it's just, it'll get you by. And a lot of guys use it. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need the quality stuff. And you're faced with the cost of trade school, faced with getting tooled up, because so many other industries, so many other jobs, even within our industry, if you're a parts counter person, or if you're an admin, sales admin or whatever, you're in the industry, but you're not faced with owning, these days you need to come in as a starter technician at $15,000-$20,000 worth of equipment to get going, to be somewhat self-sufficient. Everybody borrowed stuff in the beginning and everybody was faced with that, but you wanted to get your own gear as quickly as you could. And that's the reality of today, of getting good quality stuff and getting just the essentials, just the basics. You're going to spend, 10, 15 plus to get going. and then every week you're adding to it. Every week your bill gets higher, and the wages have to keep up with it, because that's what our expectation is as employers. We expect these technicians to come in with tools. There's very few shops that are providing that, and so you have to pay commensurate with what we're expecting them to have. And then it's stuck at work. And then when you have a hobby, you're trying to duplicate your set, so you're not carrying stuff back and forth every day. So I understand it completely. All my stuff from a field truck from 10 years ago now is sitting in plastic totes.
Yeah.
They didn't have a box to put it in, and now it's still sitting in plastic totes.
What happened to your Snap-on box collection?
I know. I should have done better at that. That's what I should have done.
I remember bringing you that fucking old. Remember that old torque wrench I had that I brought? I still have that. I still use it. That saved me from buying another torque wrench for a long time, because that one went down far enough that I could use it for a lot of things. Now I'm spoiled and I have a nice digital green 1/2-inch drive one that I absolutely fucking love. But my little dumbass fucking self can't use that thing on anything bigger than like a 6068 head bolt. Like them 6090s and the 13.5s, I still have to use the 3/4 inch breaker bar, and I have this little tiny magnetic. This is what I used for years before I got that digital torque wrench. It's like $60, and it's this little magnetic angle thing that you stick. You can put it on a wrench, you can put it on a ratchet, whatever, and that's how I torqued them for years. And that's how I still have to torque the big stuff, because my ass is too fucking small to be over there heaving on a ratchet that's, well, I mean, it's long for normal people, but for me, it's not long enough.
That's
remember
right. Just
one
get
time when
longer extension, or extension to your
breakers.
cheater pipe, really. Yeah.
Yep.
Just keep getting longer one, and you'll be able to get it turn free.
Oh yeah, I remember one time I made the mistake of asking Rick for help to break. It was on, those hydraulic caps on dozers. The hydraulic tank cap, like, it's like a square drive, and they're fucking Hulk himself has put them on there. I was over there with my fucking 3/4 inch bar heaving on that motherfucker, and I could not get that thing to come off. And I asked Rick for help, and he went over there and he put his fucking ass into it, and he broke my extension, and he ate shit. I distinctly remember that. That was funny. I don't know why that just popped in my head when I thought about breaker bars. Like, I distinctly remember that situation.
All those tricks that, as older, as me, as a guy who's been around the industry for a while, we need to share with the young guys too. All those stupid little tricks,
The hammer.
Smack it with a hammer.
Smack him with a hammer. That.
I did learn, though, that you got to be careful on how you do that, or you will fuck it up to where you can't get a socket on it, or fuck it up to where I ended up getting, like, here's a great use for Harbor Freight tools. Their extensions or their adapters are great fucking, like, you put that thing in there and use that to fucking smack it, because then it's not fucking up the drive hole or the fucking anything else. So.
That's right.
But
see, we got all kinds of tricks.
Well, that's what I try and tell people all the time, is like, being a mechanic, like, you think, people think a good mechanic is like, and to an extent, I guess it kind of is like knowing exactly how to do something, right? I've done so many motherfucking backhoe transmissions now that I can do those in my fucking sleep. Or like, brakes and axles and shit like that. There's certain jobs that I've done so fucking many of that I can do them in my fucking sleep. But that, I don't feel like, is what makes a good mechanic, because anybody can repeat something a million times and get good at it. It's knowing how to figure out stuff that you don't know how to do. It's having the tools and the mental tools to figure things out, and understanding the systems, and being able to read a theory of operation and actually understand what you're reading and comprehend what you're reading. And there's a lot of people, there's a lot of guys that are good, decent mechanics that can swing parts in and out all day, but you give them a theory of operation and they're like, I don't get it.
Yep. there's every aspect of machinery, electronics or hydraulics or even powertrain for that matter, fuel systems. There's a theory and there's lots of components, lots of piece parts of it and components of it that all have to tie in together. And so understanding that theory of why do we use that sensor to tell the controller that the temperature is this, or the hydraulic temperature is this, so why does the engine controller need to know that? It's like, well, we can start to cut the pumps back, or I should say the hydraulic controller, why does it need to know what the engine temperature is? It's like, well, we can cut the pumps back and reduce the load on the engine and continue to operate instead of just overheating the engine into oblivion. And so understanding why those interact with one another and understanding why, that theory of it is so important. But I think you talk about it being a good mechanic or being a good technician these days, I'm afraid we're losing that with the way of the manufacturer today is, especially when it comes to warranty, they want you to be able to replace the part and don't tear into it. They don't even sell seal kits for some things because they want to go back to their supplier if it's a failure under warranty and get reimbursed from them. And so they don't want the dealer tearing into some of that stuff. And I think we're losing the ability to understand the internal workings of those components and basically turning our technicians into parts changers. They don't get a chance to find the failure, get a chance to tear it down and see what came loose or what was maybe a design issue in the pump. When the oil is really cold and flow, how long does that survive without oil flowing? With lubrication flowing to it. And how many startups on a cold morning, minus 10 degrees is that going to run? And when you tear into the component, you can identify that and find out that it's starved for oil. But you never ran low on oil, but it was starved for oil. And we just don't even worry about that stuff these days. We just put a new part on it and go on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Ends up tearing it down and figuring out that they need to design it differently or run a lower, winter weight oil or whatever the case is. And I think we take that away. Whereas before, when you were a technician, you brought in a machine and you went through the entire thing, and no big hard parts were replaced, but lots of seals, lots of packing kits, and maybe some rotating groups and whatnot. But you were rebuilding these components instead of wholesale replacing them. And the industry, I think, leans towards that replacement today.
Oh yeah. Well, and because I've been through, I don't know, I can't even count how many John Deere classes I've been through.
You have nails?
Yeah. That's the incredible thing is when I'm not working on shit every day, my nails aren't receding back into my finger. It's a cool they're still dirty, but it's me, so. But like with classes and stuff like that, it's an interesting thing because I've been through countless John Deere classes. And this is not even including the capstone classes. And what I realized is like the little videos that they show you of like components and pumps and how they work and the internals of it, like, the little schematic things that, how do I explain this? They're like the little movable picture things of like the control valves on top of the pumps and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's a 2D, I guess, animation of it. It kind of works, but it's not, I've never actually gotten that much out of it. It helps me. It has helped me so much to be able to like, I think the first time I saw a big axial piston pump torn down was when Jason did that clean out on that grader, and he tore apart that, and just like being able to physically, even though I've seen schematics and I've seen the little animation videos and I've seen all that shit a million times, seeing that pump torn down and actually getting my hands on like, this is a rotating group, this is what the little pistons look like, this is what the feet look like, makes so much more sense. And especially when you go into the original problem with the machine is that it had metal in the system that was brass. at first you're like, well, brass slipper feet in a pump. What the fuck does that mean? Like, you know that's what it is, but what the fuck does that mean? And then you tear it apart and you see it and you're like, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like I agree with you there that we're missing that. And even with engines, no one does engine rebuilds anymore. I think I've done 2 in the 7 years that I was a mechanic. I did a couple single cylinder things under warranty, but for the most part, it was short blocks and long blocks and complete engines. And that it's sad. Yeah, it will, even without warranty, or I guess what you were saying is like the parts warranty. The parts warranty on those are 2 years versus the labor warranty of 90 days. Of course, a customer is going to opt for that.
Well, and it's just better for the shop environment. It's better business practice that you offer that to a customer. Once again, that relationship building. You're gonna have 2-year warranty on it. It's gonna be a faster repair. We don't want you to have issues with it. And it's a vicious circle in that respect, because we're not offering those experiences to younger technicians. They're getting less and less of that exposure to that, because we don't want a young technician that doesn't have a lot of experience, that doesn't have the attention to detail developed yet, and those kind of things, to create a rework scenario.
Yeah.
And so the easiest thing is to get from outside, from a rebuild center, that's what they do, that's what they focus on, and you put that in, and then when there's a problem, it's their problem.
Yeah, you send it back. Yeah. What the fuck, John Deere?
Yep. And that's just, it's vicious, because we want to be able to do it. We can't do it because it doesn't make business sense. We don't expose a technician to do it. Pretty soon they're in the industry 6, 7, 10 years, and they've never rebuilt an engine before.
Yep.
Because they'd always replaced them. They'd done a lot of R&Rs, but they didn't, and hanging components on them, but they did not do any of the internal repair or rebuild of that. So that is tough.
And the rebuild that I did was for the ag dealership I worked at in Cheyenne. And the whole reason I actually did a rebuild on that was because it was a 6090 that had the piston ring warranty pip on it. And that wasn't actually the original complaint. The original complaint was I did an oil change on it and it looked like a milkshake. Well, it didn't. That one, different machine. That one actually had like the whole cooling system where the coolant in the oil pan in the bottom, when you drain the oil out, it was just all water, and then the oil came out. Long story short, it had a head gasket failure, which caused that. But when I took the head off, because I was just going to do a head gasket at the time, when I took the head off, you can see the little streaks going down the cylinder walls. I'm like, this has got broken rings in it, which honestly, almost all 6090s I tore apart have at least one starting little groove going. But this one had like it was bad. And I'm like, guys, this needs a rebuild or something, because that's not like, there's like 3 cylinders in here that are fucked up. And so we took it out and I got to do a full rebuild on it. And I'm talking down to like camshaft bushings I replaced. And I did all of that. We had the head machined and went through the machine shop. I actually took the valves out of that head. And then I don't know why I did. They had me take the valves out, and then we sent all of that to the machine shop. They did all the valve seats and everything, cleaned it up, brought it back, and we bought an actual rebuild kit for it. And I did a full rebuild on that engine. And the only reason I was allowed to do that was because that was actually our fleet tractor. So not only did they have part of it covered because of that PIP, but they were, at the end cost of that was my hourly wage, not the hourly rate. So they allowed me to do that. But that is one of the very few instances that I've done an actual, what I consider a rebuild. I don't consider a short block that already comes with a rotating assembly in it a rebuild. I don't consider a long block a rebuild. That is, you are swapping parts over. That is not a rebuild.
You're exactly. You're just hanging parts on it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you still gotta set timing on some of that. If you get a short block, you still gotta sometimes, depending. Usually the timing's already set, but I know on some of the smaller engines where they have that timing plate that doesn't come on the engine, you gotta take all that shit out and then put the plate back on it and then retime it, which is stupid, but whatever. But I feel like a lot of these people are missing that because, you know, I knew what the inside of engines looked like from my own projects. I've rebuilt my own engines. I've done a lot of shit in my own personal time. There's a lot of technicians that don't have that or don't have that option or don't do that, don't have the facilities to do that, don't care to do that on their own stuff. So the fact that they're not getting to do that at work, like you said, is kind of handicapping them because they don't actually know. And I'm a very hands-on learner and a very visual person, and seeing actual components helps a lot. And I feel like a lot of mechanics are like that anyways, but I don't know.
Touch and feel and see how that component fits into the next and so forth. It's pretty important for the learning process. I want to go back to something we were talking about, education, trade school, paying attention class, understanding fundamentals, understanding theory of operation, all those things. And I have to give you kudos for, we had an opportunity to get you into a class. You didn't have all the prerequisites met yet. And I think you needed, like, I don't know what it was, electronics 2 or electrical 2 or something. And there was a bypass test available for it. And I laid out my plan, tried to get you in the class, and they said, "Oh, don't even bother. Nobody's ever been able to pass the bypass. You got to go to the in-person class to do that because it's too tough to do just the bypass." I go, "No, I believe in her. I think she can do it. If anybody can do it, I think that she can do it." And you did really well on it. Passed the bypass, no problem, and got into the.
Barely passed it, but I did pass it. That test, though, I tell you what, that test was fucking hard. That is probably the hardest test I have ever taken because it was not just, and I thank God you guys had like a book that I could use to study, and which is the same book you guys gave everybody, I guess, who've tried. And I was fresh out of tech school, but it wasn't just a like, you know, how does this work and how does that work and what is a solenoid and it wasn't that. It was, here's a bunch of fucking mathematical equations that we're going to throw in your face and here's 30 questions on it, figure it out. And it was, yeah. And there's a time limit on it too.
I think you're the only one that's ever through that organization had ever passed it because other people had tried and never, and had to end up going to the in-person class. And, it was something that I had confidence you could do it, and you did it. So, yeah, kudos to you. And I just want to put that out there because what I said earlier, you're the real deal. And
tried.
And
I had some struggles here and there, but
have the mistakes and the embarrassment that comes along with cleaning up oil and
a lot. That happens so many times. I had to change my clothes like once a week. I had an incident where I had to change all my clothes. Forever there. And it was always, I never fucking got away with it. Ever. Every fucking time I'm like just about to have a bad moment or have a bad moment, here comes you or here comes Rick, like just doing their rounds. I'm like, motherfucker, I can't get away. Like, I can't even like have the sad moment of drenching myself in oil and go upstairs and get changed and not have anybody see. And then obviously I got Jason over there, who's like, and Brian for a while. Brian's such a fucking character. There's this weird misconception with mechanics that start in this industry, and I see this a lot. I did not necessarily have this, and I don't know why I didn't have this, but there's a lot of misconception with mechanics starting in the industry. They get out of trade school and they're like, I'm going to be rebuilding engines right away. And then they're mad that they're not doing that. And I've never understood this. And a lot of these mechanics get pissed off or they end up quitting or whatever because they come out of trade school and they're not doing engine rebuilds. And it's like, well, yeah.
Trade schools promote a lot of the engine, the power plant aspect of being a diesel tech or being a diesel mechanic. that's where it originates and comes from, is let's get into the biggest piece of the piece of equipment or truck or whatever. It all comes down to the power plant.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the reality. The reality is that there's lots of hoses and airlines and brake jobs and clutches, and the reality of wrenching on a truck, or the reality of equipment, is hydraulics and electronics these days.
Mm-hmm.
And after treatment, it's not so much the core engine, it's always the after treatment, which is hard to diagnose, hard to keep up with, the technology basis of that. So no, it's not all the glory of I've got an engine on the bench, or I've got one on a stand and I'm tearing it down to the block and we're getting the machine work done and we're doing all that. That's not the reality, because people don't want to spend $70,000 on an engine rebuild if they can do something else. So yeah, I think the technician that's new to the industry does get disappointed and defeated on what they're actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. But like when you came into the industry, I mean, you're working at a truck shop before getting into equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your day-to-day like? I mean, I think it was
similar. I mean, for the most part, I was just the other mechanic's bitch, pretty much. Like I just helped him with shit, and I was more than happy doing that. I did some oil changes, I did services, I did DOT inspections, actually really similar to what I did with you guys starting out when I started on cranes, where I was doing services and DOTs or not DOTs, but inspections and shit like that. That's when I started, and I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't see an issue with that. I helped with some single cylinder engine rebuilds, and but I can't actually like claim that like, oh, I was doing that. I was helping another mechanic, and I think you remember this, the reason I actually left that shop is because we didn't have work. So I was getting 40-hour paychecks, which meant I was only getting 20 hours a week, and I just bought a house. So it was just not going to work. So I didn't actually spend that much time doing my own work at that shop. A lot of it was helping other mechanics, which I was more than happy to. Like, I've always been fine with helping people. And I was young, I didn't know what I was doing, but I never entered the industry thinking like, I'm going to be doing engine rebuilds. I never thought that. So where's that disconnect coming from? And is it the trade schools not doing a good enough job of being like, hey, this is the expectations of entering the industry? Or what is it? Because I never had that. I knew I was going to be doing shit jobs.
Well, I remember when you came in, and that was the thing. I do remember that well, that you were at work in the morning. By 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, you were getting sent home. And instead of going home, you went out in the neighborhood and hit up the other shops around.
Yep.
And you asked that question: what will I be doing? Will I be helping another technician, or will I be? And it's like we don't have the time to, and we have too much of a workload to have. We'll have you shadow somebody, but you're going to get your own jobs. You're going to be able to diagnose it and do it. And we gave you the aptitude test, which you did really well on, by the way. And knew that we had somebody that was really dedicated to the industry and dedicated to, the actual technology side of it, the fundamentals of electrical and electrical systems, hydraulic systems, and powertrain and those kind of things. And that, that aptitude test weeded out a lot of people. And we knew that we were dealing with somebody that was serious about it. Because frankly, you were pretty young, didn't have a lot of experience at
I
the
was
truck
19.
shop. Yeah, you were. Wow, makes me feel old.
I feel old.
And when you came in, it's like, let's give her a chance. You killed it was a 20-question test. Most people would get, average was probably like 11 or 12 correct. I don't know that you missed more than one, maybe.
Really? I didn't know I did that good.
Yeah, you did very well on it. And that gave us that idea that, you studied hard, you paid attention in class and understood the fundamentals. And so you know, but also we didn't cut any slack either. And
Yeah.
I remember, if you couldn't break, bolt loose or, take if you're rebuilding a cylinder and couldn't get the rod nut off, it's like, well, get a longer cheater pipe and hang on the end of it.
The crane, fucking impact, something.
Figure it out, because we didn't cut you any slack either. Didn't, because you're female in the industry. It's like we have this expectation of technicians, what they're expected to do and what we can assign jobs to, and we don't want to limit anybody.
Well, I always tell people, and I've told this story like 1,000 times probably, of how I even got into heavy equipment. Because that was not my original path. Like you said, I actually worked at a truck shop, and I actually applied to a bunch of truck shops before I even looked at you guys. And no one would hire me unless it was like a night shift. And I finally, like, I saw your guys' sign. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to walk in there. So, and this is what I don't know if people really value either in the aspect of trying to get a job, is I didn't apply online to any of these places. I walked in and asked for an application and asked to talk to somebody. I think you guys were busy that day. So I took the application in, and I think Beats told you guys about me, and then I came in for an interview later. And I just specifically remember you telling me, like, well, we're actually only hiring a level 2 mechanic, and obviously you're not a level 2, but let me see what I can do. And that's when I took the aptitude test. And I also remember you telling me that you already had a female mechanic working in the shop. And I'm like, And Hatley, she was working in the shop. She was in the crane department. And I tell people this all the time, that starting in your shop was a blessing, because I was treated exactly like the men. I wasn't giving any special treatment, and I wasn't receiving the other end of the deal where I was getting shit treatment because I was a girl. I was literally treated like all the guys there. And it set a standard for the rest of the shops I worked in. And I've tried to tell people this, and I've tried to tell young people this, that the first shop you work in is very important. Because, that kind of sets your standard for the rest of the industry, and it sets your standard for the rest of the shops you work in, whether you relocate or whatever the case may be. And I ran into, in shops past that I was getting special treatment because I was a girl. Actually, the shop I worked in directly after you guys, they were sending me to shows, they were sending me to this, that, putting me in commercials, stuff like that. And that's the thing that Mark Honan actually shielded me from, and you guys shielded me from, was things like that. And I didn't realize how important that was until I went to a shop that tried to put my face all over everything. And, I finally had to fucking tell these people that, hey, I'm not going to any more of these shows unless you send a guy with me. I'm not doing it. Because these guys are getting mad because I'm going to these, the farm shows, going to high schools, whatever. They're getting mad because I'm getting time off work to go do this shit, and they're not. So you're going to make it fair, and you're going to make the guys go with me, or send the guys instead of me to some of these, because I don't want that animosity in the shop. And it's sad that I actually had to go to that level to tell them that. It's sad.
So it's not understood already that you were getting preferential treatment, because of who you were. And really, a guy can represent, that industry. I mean, clearly you represent it very well, but it's kind of being exploited, I guess, to go out to the shows and do those things. But that's a piece of what you dealt with beyond the normalcy of being a technician and the struggles of making a diagnosis. The condition of the machine when it arrives in, all those things that already makes the job difficult, that you have to be thinking. You're always on point of thinking, how is this going to affect everybody else's perception of me? That's a tough aspect of it.
Well, your reputation in the industry is very important. And, I remember my first few years, like, you guys kind of molded who I was going to be as a mechanic. I remember that first engine job I did, that was a long block in that generator unit that I didn't zip tie all the shit up and I didn't like put all the bolts back into the clamps. I distinctly remember getting my ass chewed for that. But guess what? After that, I made sure that, hey, if I didn't have a bolt for one of these clamps, we're going to find a new bolt for it and put it back. So at least make it look like it's supposed to be there and make it look good, because you can't have shit half-ass stuff going out of the shop, and it's
whether that customer ultimately understands or knows who worked on that piece of equipment, or that truck. It's your reputation out there, and you would like to be proud of what you did, so that if a customer asks, hey, who was it that worked on my truck or loader, it would be that you'd be proud to say, hey, I did that. That was me, and hopefully they're asking because they're wanting to, give credit to where it's due on who worked on it. You do have to take pride in what you do on a day-to-day basis. And if it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer, but making sure that you put a good product out is the utmost importance. And building those relationships with customers is different than the car industry, where you're kind of just working on a car and you don't understand the customer. The service writer had that relationship with the customer, and the technician really does not get that and doesn't seek it, doesn't have the time to develop it. Equipment industry, truck industry, those guys are always looking for somebody they can count on, somebody they can lean on to be partnered in their business with them. And they're happy to pay. They're happy to pay the labor rates that we're asking for these days in the industry, if they know that they can count on it, because they're basing that machine operating or that truck rolling down the road, because really it's a tool for them. It's a tool in the industry to make money. With that tool, they employ other people. They've got other crews that are working around that piece of equipment, or they've got team drivers that are in that truck. And there's more people relying upon that tool being operational and running, and that's something they can count on. And so they're
yeah. Well, it's production, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so I think that relationship building within our industry particularly is more important, and taking that pride is more important, and making sure that it's been tested well, and you're notifying them of other needed repairs at the same time you're making that repair for what was asked for. It goes hand in hand to developing that. But
I was doing a control valve on, I think it was like a 250D, I want to say, like an older excavator, at the other construction shop I was working at. And I started toting up some of my wrenches up there, and I'm like, fuck this. And I took my whole green little tool cart and hooked it to the crane, and then I put it up there and put it up on the fucking top of it. Everybody was laughing, like, why the fuck is your toolbox on the top of the excavator? It's like, because I'm fucking lazy and I really don't want to be walking up and down this motherfucker. You know how much time I'm going to save right now?
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. That's genius to put it up there, because when you're running your efficiencies and how fast you can get that repair done, all you're doing is helping yourself. You're just more efficient in what you're doing and what you're working on. That was the outside the box thinking that is great, and that you should be applauded for. So
do you remember or not, do you remember, I get asked this question all the time, and you might laugh at it because obviously you've seen me work. I get asked this question all the time, and they're like, how does such a small girl work on such big equipment? I don't understand. It's all so heavy. And my answer to this every single time is like, well, the button on the crane works fucking awesome. Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard on my thumbs sitting there pressing buttons all day. I don't know how I do it either. I'm just a fucking badass, I guess.
Yeah. I guess people lose vision on what it. Yes, it's hard, heavy work, and the tooling. You get into 1-inch drive stuff, it gets heavy, but physically it takes a toll on you. But you can get it done. Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Ratchet straps.
Use the tooling that's in the shop. Use the tooling that's in the shop. We've got long breaker bars for a reason. We've got lifting straps and spreader bars and all of the rigging to make the pick on something that's not necessarily built to be picked out, like a hydrostat pump section, pump assembly out of a skid where the cab is right over the top of it, but get creative and get a T-bar and, and get a little assistance and work smarter, not harder. That's what it has to be.
Yep.
Well, and it's, I started in this industry. When I started at your guys' shop, I weighed 115 pounds. Like, I was tiny. People think I'm small now. They should have seen me when I started in your shop. Like, I look back at some of the pictures and I'm like, oh my fucking God, I was so small. And obviously I was like way before I started lifting weights and stuff, so I was really fucking tiny. And it's like, I found a way, figured it out. I was fine, I've also seen, people laugh at me because they think I'm too small for it. I have watched a man use a crane for a 15-pound water pump in the front of a tractor. Okay? So it's like, that's definitely something that, bro, if I can sit there and do that, I'm pretty sure you can. And he wasted a fucking 30 minutes, right? Getting the fucking crane all the way over there and hooking it up. And then I'm like, bro, that would have taken 5 minutes if you would have just lifted it up there and put it in there. Okay, but I can say that because I'm 115 pounds. If I can do it, your 200-pound ass can do it, I promise. But that, people say that a lazy mechanic's a good mechanic. And that's kind of true to an extent because we're going to find the fastest and the ways that make the most sense, right? That are faster and more efficient, But there is also a line to the lazy scale where, if you're sitting on your computer all the time or you have to use a crane for a 15-pound water pump in front of a tractor, yeah, that's not some people. It took me a long time. I used to get so mad at people, especially after coming out of your shop. I used to be so mad, get so fucking irritated when I'd see people sitting on their computers, sitting on their phones and sitting bullshitting. And I used to be that fucking bitch that got really irritated about that because the way I was taught that wasn't acceptable, right? And, I think what shops also need to kind of understand is you start letting people get away with that and it starts becoming a habit too. And I will be the first one to admit that kind of became a habit of me too. Especially I had to catch myself and I had to work on myself with that. And the phone's so fucking annoying. What is so fucking important on your phone? I mean, I get it because I've been there. I've had those days where I'm like, I don't fucking want to be here at all. But I think shops need to work on the standards they're setting because that, when there are people that are working and are trying and, we take breaks, when we're on our phones on our break time and maybe if we get a phone call, it's important or a text message, we'll answer it real fast or whatever. For the most part, we're not really on our phones. So people are actually out there trying and working hard. It's really disheartening to see other people get away with shit like that. They see other technicians getting away with not doing their fucking job and being lazy. And I was just talking to this guy yesterday about that and about the shop atmospheres and how that can be important and how one shitty mechanic can bring down, especially if they're in a lead position where they're a higher mechanic or whatever, one mechanic or one leader or one person with a shit attitude can bring the entire shop down. And it's hard. I
think it kind of lends itself to what's the leadership like in the shop? What is the service manager like? Is there a foreman? How does he, how does he manage and assign jobs and all those things? And it does come down to leadership within the shop because you set a standard and everybody has to meet the same standard. I mean, you start setting different standards for different people because of whether they've been with the company a long time or they're new or maybe they're very experienced or they came from someplace else. The same standard has to apply to everybody, regardless of how long they've been there, how much they know, how whether they're male or female, the same standard has to apply because ultimately the same work needs to get done. I mean, I think that as an industry, we're missing out a lot of great female technicians that as an industry was never welcomed into it. But ultimately that person, that female that's getting into the industry has to fill the same expectation.
Yeah,
And so
I
I think
agree
it
with
goes
that
back
completely.
to what, you know, how you came in and what we asked you to do and what we expected of you to do was something that, you know, we worked hard at not exploiting, you know, for 1 second, but also not cutting any slack for what we would be asking any other technician in the shop to do.
Yeah.
And maintaining that standard, you know, is what I think a lot of people miss. A lot of shops miss. And, you know, and then you have that animosity building because so-and-so is getting away with it. And I just got my ass reamed for doing the same thing. And, you know, and for whatever reason, and that's, I think, ultimately be consistent. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. And you know, there's the other side of the scale where this is very, you know, this is few and far between, but I've spoken to certain individuals that are female that are in this industry, and their mindset is not correct. And I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong way of thinking, but this industry is a rough cut industry. This is not for the fucking faint of hearted. You got to be in it for the right reasons, and you got to be your drive and your goals and how you perceive things has to be correct. Obviously, if some guy's being a sexist asshole, I get that. But you can't blame all your problems and all your failures on the men. This is not some, you know, I get asked this question all the time of like, oh my God, how it must be so hard working with all these men. Oh my God. And I'm like, how is that relevant? Because I can tell what's his face to go fuck off. I'm working, leave me alone, fuck off. And we're fine. It's not like, yeah, try that in a fucking office. Like, it's not, men are not this like evil entity that is trying to destroy your career. And obviously that's not the case for all men. I know there's shit people out there, but there's shit people on both sides. But like, yeah, it's not, as a whole, the industry is pretty welcoming to anybody that wants to be in the industry. So you can't enter the industry with this mindset of like, oh my God, these men are going to be horrible and I need to be scared and I need to work extra hard to prove myself. Work extra hard to prove yourself, but don't do it because you're fucking a girl. Do it because you want to be good at what you're doing and you want to prove that you're good at what you're doing.
And at the same time, don't expect that you're going to get, you know, softer treatment because you are
exactly.
Because you're wanting to enter this industry, you need to understand it. Understand it's been male dominated for a long time. It continues to be, but what we're missing as an industry and as leaders of that, and leaders of shops and service management and foremen and whatnot, they need to understand that they're missing out on a 50% of society that could be great technicians.
Well, and I think a lot of that stems way back into not even, you know, that's kind of like our end result of our crisis, right? That service managers aren't even getting the opportunity to hire a woman. So if you track back into that, where is this fucking issue starting? A lot of it is nobody, if the high schools even offer electives, most women are going to see these, you know, automotive and welding electives. They're going to be like, fuck that. I don't want my hands dirty. It doesn't seem appealing to me at all.
I think it starts even before the high school age. I think we're in a throwaway society. Nobody repairs anything anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm old, so it's different, you know, landscape than what it was when I was growing up. But I mean, you would repair radios. There was tube TVs and tube radios that, you know, I remember the tester, you'd take, you know, at the Kmart would, you know, you take your tubes down and you would test them if they would work or not. And if they didn't work, then you bought a new tube and you went back and you fixed your TV or you fixed your radio. And I think it was just part of society back then that you repaired a lot of things. You know, it wasn't that far removed from farming society where you were independently dependent on yourself. And you had to be able to repair things. You had to be able to work on stuff and keep things running. And today we throw things away.
Mhm.
It's not intended to be disassembled. It's not intended to be modified or repaired. You couldn't find your repair parts if you did get it apart and find out what was going on with it. And we just throw it away. We buy new, and that's just the way it is. And nobody understands that you can and have to fix things and want to get your hands dirty and figure out how to tinker with stuff. And I want to know why that sound comes out of those speakers. I want to know why, um, the gearing on my bicycle functions the way it does, and what makes the chain move. And I mean, if you look at things from a different, set of lenses, I think, get intrigued by that. And we're taking that away from our youth, because I think it begins before high school. I think it begins, and I think Caterpillar does a great job with this. And I would love to know the motivation behind the toys, not just providing a toy to a child, but I truly believe 20 years ago they were trying to develop technicians in the society, because the haul truck that was provided, came with a little wrench set, plastic,
Mhm.
but you could remove the tires from. And the bed dump function worked, and it articulated, and all those things. And I think we need more of that in our adolescent time frame, that we can just know that things come apart and go back together, and you can
Yeah.
modify it. I mean, I think the closest thing we have to that is Legos these days, but they're more toy like. They're not.
There's like RC cars and stuff like that, but those are expensive. So
And I think if we had more of those kind of things, we would develop more people that want to learn a trade and learn a.
well, not teaching them the trade is like this horrible low life job either. Like, I owned a house before I was 21 thanks to a trade. So I'm making more money than my mother, who has like 6 college degrees.
Yes. And that's the other. We push our youth into college. You have to go to school. You have to continue your education. You have to get a well-paying job where you're in a cushy, office environment, and you work on a computer, and you're going to do all these great things. The trades are so important, and learning those trades are so important. And we've missed that mark on who qualifies for trades. For those students not getting high grades in English, math, and science, are automatically relegated to a junior college, or hitting the industry in the trades, when there's a lot of intelligent people in the trades. There's a lot of people that could have easily breezed through 4-year degree program at
Or
any
did
university,
already.
or have already.
Yeah.
And they want to do something physical. They want to do something you can see your results. You have a broken machine truck come in, and you put one out the door that's fixed and repaired and ready to put another 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 hours on it, or a million miles. And so I think there's results that you see and you get from working in the trades in this industry. And I think we've lost that there's something cool about, for outside of the diesel mechanics industry. There's something cool about framing a house, pouring a foundation,
Yeah.
seeing those results, wiring up a house or plumbing it or whatever. And I think we're missing all that. I think it is being replaced by a lot of people coming in and taking over those trades. And unfortunately, we have a lot less people entering them.
Yeah.
So how do we develop that? I don't know. It's just, I think we're struggling now in 2022. I don't want to see what it looks like in 2024 or
Yeah.
2044.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I've always been a big advocate of, the high school that I went to. Granted, my background as my father. You've met my father. You know where I grew up, and it's pretty obvious as to why I picked the industry. It's a pretty straightforward, like, this fucking makes sense, right? But when I went to high school in Laramie, they had automotive and welding and ag mechanics and agriculture and woodworking. And a lot of these electives were not just electives, they were required for graduation. You had to take at least one semester of automotive, and you had to take at least one semester of either welding or woodworking. You had to pick between the two. It had to be one of those, though. You had to graduate. So, I've told this story a million times where, you'll see girls and guys and the preppy kids, the weird emo goth kids. You've got all the kids in a fucking welding class running beads on an arc welder. Do you think that they would have ever picked that if they had the choice? No. And maybe it's forcing it down their throats, maybe it's not, but at least it gives them the chance of like deciding, yes, I like this. This is fun. This is something I think I could do. Or like when I first started in middle school, it was like late middle school in Walden is when I started welding, and I took a welding class there. And I told my dad, like after the first day that we started welding, once we graduated from like doing torch stuff to actually welding, I'm like, Dad, I want to be a welder. I want to be a welder. I'm going to be a welder. But even growing up around it, and just having those resources and having that ability to try it and see if it works for you, I think that would help a lot. And having that on top of having like what I'm trying to do with my social media and with this podcast is getting out there like, this is a great trade to be in. This is a career. This is not just a shit job. This is a career. And, I have used my following a lot to try to push, like, show videos of like, maybe it's me and Cummins Cowgirl had this conversation about how like it's kind of romanticized because, women are starting to, they see it's trendy, right? It's trendy to work on your car. It's trendy to work on your truck. There's girls like me and Cummins Cowgirl that started doing this long before it was fucking cool. And we were posting it long before it was cool. We were posting it when we would get the entire comment section is full of keyboard warriors that hate us, right? And we were still doing this. Now it's like the coins have flipped, and I do think it's romanticizing the industry a little bit more than it should be on some of these. But it's you got the girl that's in like a bikini being like, when I show up to weld, I'm like, that's not a realistic expectation, but okay. I mean, it gets you views and likes and followers, so I get it. But guys, this is not what you're not wearing a bikini at work. I fucking promise. I wear guys' clothes. I'm wearing guys' shirts. I'm wearing the guys' jeans. Like, come on. But it's hard because I'm trying to get it to where people understand that and see that this industry is a great option.
It is a great option. And I do think I understand what you're saying about being romanticized and it's trendy at this point to get into it, because I think that as I've been in the business and working in dealerships, and I think we got to open our arms to any and all comers and give them a chance to get into it. They truly want to get into it, but you got to get into it for the right reasons. You need to understand.
You don't need to be into it because you want to take pictures at work, right? Like that's the misconception that people have with me a lot. Is like, oh, you're just doing it so you can, take pictures and post them. I'm like, no, I was doing this for like 5 years before I started actually doing this in social media. So like, but I get it because there are people that do that.
Well, you're too invested in it. One, you're invested in the training and the knowledge because it takes years to gain that, but you also invested in your tooling. You can't just play in this. You can't dabble in it. You need to do it for the career. It's a great career. It'll take you all kinds of places, meet all kinds of great people in the industry, and it is a career, and people need to understand that it's tough. It's hard on your body. It's hard. It's a long learning curve to get really exposed to all different aspects of it. And there's a lot of investment. We talked about the tools earlier. It's a commitment, and they need to get into it for the right reasons. There is great opportunity there, for gals to get into it, guys because we need any and all that want to get into it right now. The entire industry needs it. Our competitive people in the world, and as nations compete for industry and compete for manufacturing, superiority and all those things. We need to have these people in the United States and build their careers, and otherwise other people around the world will take over that manufacturing dominant.
Oh yeah. Well, and you're proof of it, that you can start from nothing, and you don't have, just because you start as a mechanic does not mean you have to be a silverback and be a mechanic until you're like 80. You know, you don't have to. I hope he sees this. Oh my goodness. But anyways, like, you don't have to do that. You obviously, there's some respect in that, and that's the path that I kind of saw for myself. Like, maybe not that far to an extent, but like, I wanted to be a mechanic for like 20 years and then work up into being service manager and stuff like that. Little did I know I'd be thrown to the wolves and running a shop for 3 months at year 6. But there's a lot of room to grow. You don't have to stay in a shop until you can't walk anymore. You can put in 10, 15 years, 20 years, and then, or whatever, and then get into a leadership position, and there's room to grow there.
Right now there's more opportunity than ever before, because there's such a need in the industry, because it filters out. Not everybody's going to want to step into a management role or take on that responsibility and the requirement of it. But there's fleet management opportunities, and there's opportunities within the manufacturers, and there's so many different avenues that this takes you. But getting the fundamentals and spending your time and earning your chops to get there is so important. And it opens up. When I was in a field truck for all these years, I met the greatest people and developed relationships as a provider and a customer, and then it developed more into friendships of great people, great dirt movers in the industry, and big commercial builder successes. And it opens up a lot of opportunity, a lot of fun stuff. This being on the dirt side of it, every building that goes up, every water line, every storm drain, every canal system and sewer is, you got to open up the ground to do that. Every overlot job, every housing development, it all started with the raw ground, and then it was developed from there. And so you see whole cities get built up around as you travel around and see this. It's just opens your eyes to so many other things.
Oh yeah, it is. And it's it's an industry that, like, obviously I can kind of be a hypocrite because I left the industry, but yeah, I miss it.
This is one of those avenues that opened up to you.
Yeah.
It was because you were in a shop working and toiling away, figuring out how to get jobs done and working smarter, not harder, and getting dirty, and then it opened up other opportunities for you.
Well, it's hard because the position I was in, like, I wanted, where I'm at right now, the construction dealership kind of pretty much told me to go fuck myself, because the lady had a comment from one of the guys when I interviewed there saying, like, the foreman wanted to hire me. He was all down for it. He's like, fuck yeah, you've got fucking 7 years of experience. Yes, we need you. Let's, like, get you hired on yesterday. And then the owner lady got wind of I had a following on social media. And she looked up my social media, and apparently the owners of this company are very, very old school, very, very modest, very, I don't know how else to put it, people. And she said that she did not like my content that I post, and that she had seen some of the videos I've taken in a shop, and she does not want her company even remotely associated with anything I've posted. So if I were to be hired on there, I couldn't even take a picture, and I'm like, okay, I get it. It's your company. Is there a way I can work with you on this, right? So, the company, let me just explain something, is what I told her. Like, all these videos were taken after hours. or if they weren't after hours, I had a camera recording and I was working. I wasn't sitting there constantly touching it and fucking with it and posting while I was at work. Like I did everything, and I had permission from my bosses. This was not done behind their back. This was not, they all knew what I was doing. They all knew it. And I had keys and shit to come in on Saturdays and do shit. And so is there a way I can work with you on, like, you know, making sure I don't show my uniform, make sure there's no decals in the pictures, you know, can I even just take pictures of equipment and not have me in it? Because this is something I love and I love to share it, and I love what I do and I have a passion for it and I like to share it. And she said, absolutely not. Long story short, I did not work for that company. So the only other options I had were ag dealerships. And because, you know, someone like that, if they're not willing to work with you on something like that, they're not going to be willing to work with you on anything else that comes up in the future at all. So I'm like, you know what? This is probably not the company for me. And so the company, all the other companies around this area were agriculture dealers. Well, all the agriculture dealers are open on Saturdays. And a lot of these people are so drowned in work that you are not just working half a day on Saturday. You are working full fucking days on Saturdays. Or if you are working a half day a Saturday, you're working every fucking Saturday. And I didn't really have a choice. So I hired on with the one company that said I could work every third Saturday, which never happened. And then, you know, that was the best deal I could find. They were half days, and they claimed that I could work every third Saturday when we were not in harvest season or planting season, which I thought was fair. Never turned out that way. I never had every third Saturday. I always worked almost every other Saturday. But, you know, this is a problem I discussed with the gentleman I talked to on the last episode, was that the industry needs to work a little bit on there's got to be a balance, a home life balance for your employees to be happy. And if you want good production out of your employees, they got to be happy. And one of the things being happy is having a decent home life. Like, I'm already giving you, I would be more than happy to work 12-hour days for 5 days a week. More than happy to do that. Give me my fucking weekend. Like, and and so when I got a call from Tyler and he's like, hey, well, you know, this is what I got to offer you. At the time, it was like, I'm so fucking sick and tired of working 6-day weeks, and it is like fucking 95 degrees, and with the humidity here, it's like 110. The shop doesn't have any overhead cranes, and the overhead cranes it has are shit. None of these shops around, all these ag dealerships were like really, really, really fucking small. Like, I'm shocked they're a dealership because, and it's my fault because I was spoiled from the construction side that has overhead cranes and really nice overhead cranes, really big overhead cranes. And we did a lot of work with a fucking service truck in the shop, the last shop I worked in, which was fine, honestly. It really wasn't horrible. But it was kind of an easy decision for me to leave the industry. Even though, like, I sit here every day and I'm like, I want to go to work. I want to go to work and I want to work on shit and I want to fix equipment and I want to work at a Deere dealership. I don't want to fucking give away 6 of my 7 days a week to do so. And it's just getting worse. It's getting worse and worse and worse.
It's compounded by not having the techs. I mean, the work is there. The you know, the whole COVID thing is what it is, and it just created a bubble of people, you know, staying at home and remodeling their kitchen and doing whatever, and then they expand to the outside, and landscapers are just hammered, and you know, so all the small equipment side of it, those guys are still going like gangbusters, and we don't have enough techs to work on the equipment. And then so the ones we have are overworked, even on the ag side of it. You know, you start the whole industry as guys retire and get out of the industry, you can't replace them. It just puts that much more of a burden on the ones that are in it. And so it then requires you to work every Saturday. I mean, because the work is there and you're trying to get it out the door. So it's just compounded by the lack of technicians right now. And I don't know the labor statistics from a couple of years ago. I do know that they were looking at a shortage of, you know, 20,000 technicians, you know, within a year or two of that time frame. And maybe this goes back like 4 years ago. I don't know what it is today. I don't know what the data tells you, but it's certainly we're tens of thousands of technicians short today, right now.
Well, every single shop is hiring. Every shop is hiring a technician of any level, usually. And it's, you know, yeah, it's I would love to see that change, because I would love to see people that are in my situation not leave the industry, and not have that temptation, or that, I have a fucking life now. Like, and back when I was working, even when I worked a lot of hours during the week, at least I had my fucking weekend to do shit, or Saturdays were optional, or,
That's a great aspect of the industry in general. Outside of the truck, you get in the equipment, it's a Monday through Friday gig. Most dealerships are not open on Saturdays. Ag side's different, but on the construction side, and of course truck shops are going to be different, but they're 24/7. But on the construction side industry, I mean, you pretty much guarantee you're going to have your weekends. That's just not going to work. It's Monday through Friday gig. So it's a great aspect. It's a great career path to take. I think, and it's also great. The starting wages have bumped up so much.
Oh, even from when I started.
Inexperienced guys are commanding, mid-20s to start or higher.
Yeah, which is insane, because I started at 17, and I thought I was rolling in the dough when I started at 17.
At that time, we thought we were paying way too much for everybody to start at that time without the experience, for that given time period, and add $10 to that now.
Yep.
I mean, that's the reality.
Yep.
So,
oh yeah.
It's, and the $30 an hour range is no longer just the field tech dream. That can easily become a shop tech wage. So it's, and obviously that's dependent on the area. I'm not talking California, guys, because it's like $50 an hour is like a shit wage in California. So, everywhere that's not California, that's normal. The $30 to $40 an hour range. Yeah, I had a guy offer me, they're like, oh, we'll start you at $40 an hour if you'll get out here. I'm like, yeah, and what is my 2-bedroom house I buy? Fucking $500,000? No, thank you. Or $1 million? No, I'm good.